just a little bit of housekeeping. Please help yourself. If you don't get that in the mail and you want to sign up, see our front desk. Delivered straight to you. But if not, there's events coming up. Lunch and Learns are always second and fourth Tuesdays. And so after this one, our next one will be May 9th, where we have Serena Jackson, who wrote the memoir Cute as a Button, Tough as a Girl, about growing up in Saginaw. So that should be really interesting as well. So, thank you. Yes. So if you need a restroom, you will find one just out those back doors right there. Very convenient. And otherwise, I would say perhaps if you've got your cell phone, if your volume's cranked up, if you can silence or turn it to vibrate, that will be helpful. All right. So our speaker this afternoon is Larry Pruter. He was born and raised in Saginaw and attended Buena Vista School District, graduating in 1965. He was employed and retired as a journeyman machinist toolmaker at GM Delphi. He has always had a keen interest in history and researched his family's genealogy back to the 1500s. And I hear the speaker just also, when the speaker got excited about 1500s, there we go. He's very active in his community, and he also serves on the TAYMOUth Township Fire Department. 48 years of service, his last 3 as fire chief. He volunteers as the Saginaw County, at the Saginaw County Fair as an assistant superintendent, the Antiques Department, and is also a charter member of the TAYMOUth Historical Association and serving as president for the past 12 years. Very active in our community. So we're really happy to have Larry here to share some of that research on the history of the TAYMOUth Fair and the Flint River Agricultural Society. So please welcome Larry.
Don't clap until we're done. We'll start off with a couple questions. How many people know where Birch Run is located? Have been there, the mall? Yeah. The traffic, and that's not us. We're 6 miles to the west, trying to give you a perspective of where this all takes place. TAYMOUth today is a quiet residential farming community, about 5,000 people, and Birch Run Road is the thoroughfare from M13 to into town for the mall, and a lot of traffic on that. How many have ever heard the word Pewanagowink? Pewanagowink. Okay, we're going to get that in the program. So that's my questions for today. Like Jen said, president of the Historical Association. We're a very active group, and we meet at the Bird Opera House. And 2017, TAYMOUth celebrated its 175th anniversary of the forming of the township. And it is the 3rd oldest township in the county. And a lot of people didn't know that, and I didn't know it until I started researching for the 175th. The Treaty of Saginaw was formed in 1819. Saginaw County was organized 1822, and then formally in 1835, state of Michigan was formed in 1837, and TAYMOUth was formed 1842. So we're right back to the beginning of the state and early into the county. Say the 3rd oldest in the township in the county. This is our township seal, and too many gadgets here. Come on. Anyways, the Township Hall on the left, the St. Paul's Episcopal Church on the top, church over on the right is the Indian Church, Mission, and the center bottom is the Bird Opera House. And this here's the 1859 map, early map of TAYMOUth, right after it was formed. And the left, the right lower box there today is the actual border of the township, 6 by 6. But in 1859, the township also included all of Elby Township and up to the top, Spalding Township. Within 10 years, they both broke away and formed their own township government. Just putting things into perspective, this is a copy of the county map. You see Taymouth down there to the far right, and we're right on the county line, and with Genesee County and Montrose. This gentleman here is David Cook, early settler in the township, wealthy farmer, was noted for raising draft horses, and was very instrumental in getting the fair started. He goes back, his family goes back in the township in the 1850s. This here's two pictures of the St. Paul's Episcopal Church. Our historical group is in process of slowly restoring this back to where it was. And you can see the interior of it here, and some of you have been there into the church for our programs. Locally, it's called the Cook Church, being that David Cook donated the land for the church and also for the cemetery. And it was just basically a country church with about a 1 acre cemetery around it. Today it is the largest cemetery in the township, probably about 30 acres, and used by quite a few people. Another map of the township, and you see the little red dot down the end. That's in the area we're talking about with the church and the cemetery. There's another map of Taymouth, and I don't know if you can make out seeing where you're at, but the red outlined right there is the property he owned, and it's along on the Flint River. The bottom border is Genesee County. Of course, then the Flint River winds around through the township and then back up to the north. There's Montrose Township, which borders right to our south, up to the center right there, outlined, and the fairgrounds is located there. The fair was formed in 1868. David Cook was very instrumental in getting it going, and it wasn't the idea of having a large fair. His idea was to have a fair at his farm, and he had 3 large barns with his draft horses and whatnot, and owned a lot of acreage. So he hosted a neighborhood fair, and he did that for 3 years, and it really took off. And so they decided that, hey, we'll make this an annual thing. The fair then, from his farm, moved about a mile to the west down Seymour Road, which runs along the county line, and the fairgrounds the fair moved to is actually in Genesee County. And when they moved down there, it was the site of a local horse track back in the woods, and they leased the property for a while, then they ended up purchasing it. This is the main gate to the fairgrounds. Excuse me. Here's one of the newspapers out of Montrose of the fairgrounds. It's called the Backwoods Fair. It was one of Michigan's oldest. You know, if you go back to the original 1868, very early, just to put into perspective, Saginaw County Fair, 1914. So it had a few years jump on the Saginaw County Fair. Here's a picture of the fence and that around the infield. The building in the top right there is one of the exhibition houses and buildings, and grandstand was up there, and very popular with the residents was a beer stand underneath the grandstand. Now we're getting up into prohibition. And it went great until the sheriff caught whiff of it. He come in and ended up shutting it down.
Can I ask a question before you?
Yeah,
Was the name of the fair the Flint River Valley Fair at that time?
No.
Because it was in Flint, or?
yeah. Okay, I'll back up a second, I'm sorry. So, you know, at the beginning, it was called the TAYMOUTH Fair.
Right.
And then when it moved into Montrose, it still retained the name TAYMOUTH, but it was in Genesee County.
Right.
Yep. And the Flint River Agriculture Society was formed a few years later, and I think that was probably the financial arm of the fair.
Okay.
Good. Here's a picture of a part of the racetrack and one of the buildings in the back. Midway, they had, in later years, they ended up, now we're talking 3/4 of a mile off the main road that went back in, and of course no electricity at that time, but they did acquire a generator, and which allowed them to, you know, run at night, and that would power the rides and whatnot and lighting. There's a story in a Montrose paper that this generator was running, and a young lad decided to go over to the generator and turn up the wattage on the power, and blew out all the light bulbs in the fair. So everything come to a stop. They had to come into Saginaw, purchase a bunch of light bulbs, go back out and get it going again. This is another picture of the racetrack and their exhibition and judging for cattle. By the way, this was a half mile track, and so you get some idea how big this fairgrounds was. Another picture of the Midway. About 1900, they did have hot air balloon rides, and very popular with it. And also, they had a small landing strip, and they gave plane rides. People wanted to take the plane ride. There's some more judging of cattle, Black Angus, and at the beginning, before they got the buildings up, a lot of the livestock and whatnot was kept in tents, or housed in tents. These are tickets to the fair, admit 1933, the center one, Agricultural Society, and top one, the same thing. These are some ribbons that I borrowed from Montrose Historical Telephone Museum, and that they lent me. You can see a premium on the one on the right, the white ribbon, the Flint River Valley Agricultural Society, 1928, 1936. I've done research on the fair. We know it started in 1868, and it closed somewhere around 1936, 1937. I got a couple books, premium books, that were printed for 1936 and 37. But I think the fair was right at its end right there, and there never was a fair, but the books were, you know, passed out. So I asked about Pewanago and that is a Indian reserve on the west side, east side of the river, run along the Flint River, and there was the largest population of Chippewas in the Saginaw Valley, and they were really involved with the fair. They were noted for their weaving of their baskets, and they would take them down there and sell them for sale. Another picture of the racetrack. A couple race horses. They had races 3 times a day. It was very popular, real crowd drawer. There was circuit riders that came around, and racers from Flint, Genesee County, whatever would come. And I would just about bet there was probably betting on the track, on the horse races. And here's the one flyer that was in the paper, the Flint River Agriculture. 6 fairs in one, 50 cents to get in, You can read it at the exhibition. And the dates, August, end of August. Another poster we acquired, 1917. These kind of jump around a little bit, but you can get the idea. It was pretty active. And you see there are 3 races a day. There's the exhibition stand at the track for picking out the winners of the race. This is one of the fields off the side of the Midway, and later years was used to park cars. Now today, the township population is around 5,000. There's newspaper articles that state in its heyday, they estimated the population attendance at the fair was 10 to 12,000. So it was very, very popular. And keep in mind, Saginaw, up until we started with plank roads, most of the roads were dirt roads or plank roads, or from Indian trails. And as time went on, of course, the railroad was the big pusher and the organized into the county. On the left side there, you see Burt. Burt was the largest town in the township, and it's just a village now of basically residential. But the south line there, it says Montrose. It's right on the border, and to the right, there's TAYMOUth, Morrisville, Blackmar, Verne, and Foster's. And there was quite a competition between Morrisville and Burt in 1880s for the replacement of the rail line. And it's usually at whatever the rail was, the towns would prosper. And at that time, there was just a dirt road through Burt. They went to Wellington Burt. Some investors from Flushing wanted to put a line in from Durand up to Saginaw, just for commerce and for passenger. And they went to Burt. Of course, everybody knows he was quite wealthy and a millionaire. He invested $250,000. That's what they're asking, and he did invest $250,000 into the line to get it started. And as a little incentive to him, he says, there's rumors are that if this goes through, we're going to name the village Burt. Well, he bid on it, I guess, so they ended up naming the village on Burt. And Morrisville at that time was in competition for the rail line, and that black line there is the rail line. The other idea was for the rail to go through Morrisville and up to the north. And their investigation decided to put it through Burt because there was less rivers to cross with trestles and bridges. And so Morrisville was plotted, and there was a number of businesses in Morrisville. Morrisville kind of fell to the wayside. Everything moved into Burt, and Burt had quite a population, and depot, opera house, general stores, saloons, hotels, bank, a couple banks, and in its heyday. This is a picture of the actual depot in Burt, which was tore down in the 50s, much to our disappointment. Would have made a great museum. And it was located right behind the Opera House. This is a train schedule that for the schedule for the track, and it was Mackinac and Cincinnati when it started out. Well, Burt, when he got into the rail line and his support, he ended up becoming president of the rail line, and it was sold to Grand Trunk. And you can see down at Durand on the bottom, and East Saginaw to at the top, and that's places where it stopped all the way into Bridgeport. picture of the train servicing the line. Opera House, which is named after Bert. He donated $1,000 to get this going because there was no community center in the town, and it is now a historical site. I got to back up here. Across the bottom there, just above where Montrose, the track crosses Willard Road. Well, during Fair Week, they ran specials from Saginaw and from Flint up, and the train would stop at that crossing there on Willard Road, and people would get off. The local farmers had horse and wagons, and it's about a half a mile down to the fairgrounds, and they were a taxi service, to people going to the fair. And that ran for 4 days during the fair. Flint, I'm not positive when the Flint Agricultural Society was formed, but it pretty much stayed with the fair from day one until it closed. In my research, and Jen said about me doing genealogy, this is my great-granddad, and he lived in Bridgeport up by Foster's, and unknowns to me until I got looking closer into him, he was a member of the fair of the Agricultural Society down there, and he was a farmer and a nurseryman, and for many years, and he was also on the original fair board from Saginaw County Fair. This is the fairgrounds today. Best I can figure out, it was at least 60 acres in private hands now. The original fair committee leased the fairgrounds for a while, then they ended up purchasing it until it was finally sold for farmland. That's some artifacts I brought. The large picture over on the side is basically a poster. We recovered that in Birch Run. There was a house that was remodeled to make into a daycare center, and they were stripping the lath and whatnot off the walls, and this was found under the lath, nailed on the wall, and I don't know if they're going to use it for insulation or what, but that's where they found it. And as far as I know right now, there's only 3 of these in existence. One is in Flushing, another one is over in a car museum in Burt, and over here you can get a closer look at the tickets. And here's a director badge from the fair. I come across this by accident in Detroit at a rare bookstore, and lucked out. I bought it online, and them are kind of hard to find. This is the county line where this is Willard Road right here, or excuse me, Seymour Road, and the fairgrounds is down about across the road from that do not pass sign. This is the corner there where it's located. And today the driveway that goes back into the grounds, the people that live there named it TAYMOUTH Drive. And all kidding aside, it's all of 3/4 of a mile dirt driveway back into to the open area where you've seen where the buildings were and the cars were parked and all that. And there's 4 houses down there with that in that area. A lot of it is that's the driveway. And I was surprised that I got permission to go back in and talk to them, and it was that far. And you can see it's a well-kept driveway. There's some beautiful houses back in there. And you get back in far enough, it picks up again along the Flint River, and they're up on the bluff and they're looking over the big valley down to the river. This is part of the racetrack that you can see the open area through there, and I think they used it for snowmobile racing, so they kind of kept the trees out of it, but it's starting to get overgrown by the woods. There's another director's badge. This is it's not there, this is gone, but it was a flower building on the grounds. Also, the Burt Methodist Church, Presbyterian Church at TAYMOUTH, and Montrose Methodist Church all had buildings on the fairgrounds where they sold their chicken dinners and for fundraisers. That was very popular with them. Top picture is the ticket booth. It's all gone now. And the lower one, the fairgrounds was profitable enough. They had a full-time caretaker that lived right on the grounds, and this is the cottage he lived in. Tom Tromley was in here. He was looking at the big poster up there, and he goes, "You glance at it. It's once called the best and largest, and if you don't look at it close, it's country fair, not county fair. Because Saginaw had, was considered the third largest in the east of the Rockies." And my acknowledgments, Nancy Stewart and Joe from Montrose Museum, and our Historical Association, and the library next door at White helped me out, and Sandy Schwann. And a lot of the newspaper clippings come from the Flushing Observer, and they took their archives, almost 100 years worth of newspapers they had saved, and they gave it to the Montrose Museum, which they have on file there now, and they're going through and picking out articles about the area, and they by regions, and they have one of the newspapers was there a couple weeks ago. The back page of the newspaper was full page, the Burt News, and there was articles for cattle for sale and everything on, advertisement. It was a big thing back then. And Joe at the museum there, pretty good friends with him, and he says, we look to you guys because of the rail line. Now, just to the east, just to the west of the museum is another train depot that they have preserved and restored, and that's on that same rail line. And he says, we look to you guys to the north as first cousins because of the rail line where everything is tied in together. And Montrose is maybe 4 miles from Burt, so it's the people intertwined there. Whatnot. So thanks for coming. And anybody got any questions?
Murray,
Yeah, Tom.
how many township fairs were there in Saginaw County? Yeah, that might be a tough question.
Boy, I don't think many. I know Vassar has one still going, but that's not Saginaw County. Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure, Tom. I don't think so. I got to back up. I asked about Pewanagawink. And going back to the Treaty of Saginaw, 1819, there was, from the treaty, there were reserves placed around the state. And Pewanagawink was the reserve. And I made a mistake here when Sandy did a program on a treaty. I says about the reservation. She says, not a reservation, it's a reserve. And the Pewanagawink Reserve in TAYMOUTH was 5,280 acres. And it ran down along the river, and the majority of Chippewas live there. And as part of that treaty, they were supposed to get, I think, 1,000 pieces of silver once a year from the U.S. government, and they were paid once, and that another treaty somehow it just all fell apart, and they got snookered. And today, you look around the state, there's, of course, it's all private land where Pewanagawink is, but you go to Mount Pleasant, Sebewaing, up to Traverse City, Indian River, and all them were part of this treaty was reserves. And that's where your casinos are today. And they are, because of the treaty with the U.S. government, they are a nation in itself, and they govern itself. And that's why you go up to Mount Pleasant. They got their own police department. They got their own fire department. And that's kind of what went on with the Pewanagawink. Mr. Cass negotiated the treaty with the Saginaw Chippewas. And Tom can attest to this about the Indian chiefs being at the Cushway House. And they negotiated that treaty, Mr. Cass, and he was representative of the government. And the Indians got snookered. I'm sorry, they got snookered. My opinion, Mr. Cass is not, because of what went on. He did this in Michigan, and then he went on to the Capitol, where he was in charge of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And you've all heard about the Chippewa or Cherokee Nation, and there was a song out about it, and where the government moved the Cherokees from South Carolina out to Oklahoma to resettle them. And Cass, at one time, wanted all the Chippewas in Michigan to move the other side of the Mississippi River. And many natives died on that trip. They were forced to march and relocate in Oklahoma. And to this day, you go out that way, and the Native Americans will not, and Cass worked under President Jackson. The Indians will not spend a $20 bill. Who's on the 20? Jackson. So that's kind of it on it. And we still have quite a number of full-blooded Chippewas living in the township. They farm and relocated there. So also an Indian cemetery, and pictures of that was on the seal, and that's all gone now. But the Indian cemetery is still there. So that's all I got, guys. So questions? Yeah.
How did the township get its name? Are they normally named after people or?
The township, the majority of settlers in the township were Scottish or Irish, and there was a town in Scotland called Taymouth, Fayton. That was the name. But then a few years after they started settling, it was rechanged to Taymouth. Also changing names. Montrose used to be called Pewanagawink. Yeah, and the mayor, supervisor of Montrose says, we can't get settlers to come to Montrose with a name like Pewanagawink. So they changed it to Montrose, and it's been that way. And I've talked to people from Montrose and asked them about it. It's been long forgotten, You're kidding, it was never, yeah, it was. So, yeah, Montrose, Pewanagawink. So, anything else? Okay, thanks for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Also,